Will the real tribal chief please stand up? Please stand up. Please stand up. You got to go with a current reference. Get with the
absolutely.
How do you do, fellow kids? Roman Reigns has returned to SmackDown after a long-awaited hiatus from long title reign and then WrestleMania, and then he's off, and then he's back at SummerSlam. He has returned with a bloodline focus to defeat this usurper, Solo Sikoa. When will that happen? Perhaps we'll discuss. I'm Tempest, that is Dan the Truth Layton, and we are here to review this week's episode of WWE SmackDown and AEW Collision. Make sure you get your thoughts in, WrestleTalk.com/support, and we will read out all of the Ultrachats at $5 and above before the end of the show. So if you have any thoughts about Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, the matches set for Bash at Berlin, or what's happening on AEW Collision and the lead into Allin, make sure you get all of those thoughts read out by submitting them to WrestleTalk.com/support. But we must kick off this show with Roman Reigns himself.
Yeah, it was a great week for fence sitters, though, I want to say, because we had two great shows here that I really enjoyed.
So nice having, I was in such a good mood setting up this podcast. I was like, sure, there are a few things we'll get to, I'm sure, but we can skim over the negative bits. I loved both of these shows, came away with highlights from both of them, and I also have now watched a video highlight pack that has been edited together on Twitter of Hangman Page to Chaperone's Pink Pony Club. I've watched it like 8 times, and I was like, God, I love wrestling. Yeah. So I'm in a wrestling mood, which is how you want to start a podcast.
No, it very much is. And I feel like this Roman Reigns return has continued to just be yummy. I was a little bit skeptical after SummerSlam as to when we would see Roman. You know, where like sometimes you get like the return and they go, we'll see him next week or whatever. This has happened a couple of times, especially while he was champion. But when the news broke pretty soon afterwards that he was going to be here on Friday, I was like, right, here we go. Let's do it. That's great. That I can still sort of hear the echoes of the cheers from the SummerSlam return still in the air. So, you know, they were going to have to do a fairly heavy pop to outdo it. And I think they certainly achieved it on SmackDown. So what had happened was, right from the off, we'd been told Roman was going to be there at some point in the day. There's a segment with Nick Aldis where he makes reference to Roman. We'll talk about that when we get there. But obviously didn't show up, didn't get a backstage, here he is arriving situation. Like, you know, you get The Rock or Austin arriving in the middle of the show.
The limo pulls up, shot of the feet. Out he comes with his soon-to-be-released Tribal Ones.
Yeah, and I want a pair. And I feel like the marketing is working overtime. We'll get to marketing in a second. But like, sometimes you get a shot like that and it can build the hype, and then but you can't, once you've done that, you need them to come out, because why would they just chill out and wait for their segment? So it's kind of nice to keep him off air. What happened instead was Solo Sikoa was backstage and the Tongans were sort of telling him he's not here. And he said, he'll be there. And I wasn't sure at first, is it talking about Jacob? Is it talking about, you know, whatever? But as he comes out, Solo stands in the ring and demands to be acknowledged. He's the tribal chief now. And if Roman, is it a lei? I can never remember what it is around the neck. There's an actual name for it.
There is an actual name for it. I think it's like the Ula Fale. I believe is what it's called.
Right. So the neck gear, I will say. He says, if you want this, you can come and get it. Right on cue, that music hits. And if I can be a media studies student for a second, bathed in blue light, the symbol of that, you know, sort of heavenly, the god is returning kind of moment. Blue is good, red is bad, which is
Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of get that bathed in blue moment. And I went back actually and watched early, you know, Roman's had blue theming anyway, but this is kind of like a more blue. So my little semiotics brain was going wild. Anyway, out comes Roman. There are major OTC chants. The marketing department are thrilled.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's
easy to get something like that over when you're hot.
It's a very easy chant to do as well. So thrilled for that. Works an absolute treat. Solo sort of sicks the boys on him. Doesn't work. Roman takes them both out, then gets in the ring, has a brawl with Solo. And it's on. Have a little back and forth. A Superman punch connects and takes out Solo. Reigns manages to get the lay back for a second. But the Tongans are back on him. Sort of having a go at him, allowing Solo to take the lay back and get away. Reigns is just too powerful, though. He's too powerful for these two boys, and so takes them over, hits a humongous spear on Tongaloa, then has a think and is like, I've got more in me. Goes to the outside, does a quick Braun Strowman run around.
Oh, it's a Braun Breaker run around now.
Yeah, well, that's true. It's a Ludwig Kaiser run around if you really want it. It's any of them. But in this moment, it is a Roman Reigns run around the ring, all the way from one set of stairs to the other to spear Tama Tonga not only out of his shoes, but through the barricade, and then grabs a chair from the ringside area, goes back in the ring, and uses that chair to absolutely batter Tonga lower. And then we kind of have a stare-off. He's staring up the aisle at Solo. Solo's giving it all the, I'm the tribal chief now, you'll never, get me. As we go off the air. It was a very short segment, but unsurprisingly, it was the segment that everyone was talking about post-show.
Well, this is the thing. Now, I have a lot of feelings about this. Pretty, all of them positive. Because, I say all of them positive. One of them was funny, and that's Tonga Loa holding up the belt wrong.
Did he hold it up wrong?
He held it up very wrong. He held it up.
Wow, okay, we're doing it.
Give me this. Give me this. If this is the tag belt, he's holding it up like this.
Oh, I don't see that as too wrong.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
He's doing it on purpose now.
Right.
He has made a mistake on every show he's been on. Now, can I get this back on the set?
Without taking me out is the question.
It does have a tendency to fall over.
I know.
Regardless. That I found funny because it is a bit at this point with this guy. Beyond that, we could have been doing this the whole time.
No, I disagree.
No, I will not have this. I understand that I don't want to go into this with revisionist history and none of that, right? Obviously, Roman Reigns getting to this point is the result of what we have gone through over the last 4 years. And you can't have this without that and all this. However...
I thought you meant the past few weeks of SmackDown.
Oh, no.
You mean since 2015?
I mean Roman Reigns
gotcha.
As the top star that he always should have been. SmackDown the last little while. Communication issue between hosts aside. We could have had this for a decade. This is exactly what people have been yelling into microphones on podcasts and all this that Roman Reigns should have been doing 10 years ago. And obviously there is a whack-ass nut job should be in prison that was making the decisions at that point compared to now. But literally, he comes out and he is the biggest badass on the show. He goes in there and he takes out the 3 goons by himself, slight beat down aside. He stands tall. How many times did we see him lose to Big Show and this guy and Sheamus and everything when he should have been a big ass-kicking Samoan tribal chief?
Why are you shouting at me? I didn't book it.
Because I'm amped up, Dan. I finally, and I know some people are going to not believe this, but if you ask any of my friends back in Toronto, they will tell you the same thing, that I have always been a big fan of Roman Reigns. Mm-hmm. I have just wanted them to do Roman Reigns right.
Right.
So now, I am eating good, brother.
Well,
this is such a welcome change, because he was a babyface.
Yeah, big time.
I'm sure there will be nuance.
And there is nuance earlier on in the show. We will get there.
I'm sure that we will see, nuance to this and levels, and he's not going to be just a white knight apple pie babyface by any means. But he is the protagonist of all of this. He is the good guy, the guy you're meant to be cheering. And even if you had to go through a heel turn to get here, you could have done that heel turn 10 years ago. And we would have had so much less. It still would have been a lot because it was a bad time. 2019 wasn't going to be good for anybody. But we could have had this greatness the whole time.
Well, it's interesting because to use the point and have a genuine conversation about it, the part of the whole adversity aspect of the blue-eyed babyface, quite literally they gave him contact lenses at one point, is what they were going for with Roman Reigns. Having him being beaten by these guys that we struggled to care about 5 years before, they were asking us to care about them in the Roman Reigns context. But that is so weird to me because imagine if Steve Austin just lost all the time. There's taken a couple of L's here and there.
I'm so glad you brought up that name.
Well, just because that's the guy, when you want to talk about an anti-hero, the one you should be booing, who you can't help but cheer, they sort of struck gold, and the more time went post-Attitude Era, the more it felt like in spite of themselves. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I think the frustration of the idea of we could have had this Roman Reigns all along comes from. Now, we didn't. We lived through it. We've got it now, so I'm not going to complain.
I'm not
thrilled.
complaining at all.
No.
I'm just looking at this going it's so good. It's so good.
Because
the last 10 years could have been so good.
Yeah, but they could have.
Yeah.
They could have. And like, it's frustrating as hell. But it's just a great example of what happens when you are, hot and everyone's in a good mood.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is what happens when you just book simply and you book strongly and smartly and makes sense. Like, to the point where I remember the SummerSlam match between Cody and Brock and feeling in the moment like, everyone's going to turn on Cody, who's my boy, because he's just getting beaten loads and keeps getting back up. And that feels like what happened to Roman Reigns. But actually, because Cody was someone who was getting wins and was someone who was being booked in the correct way, people vibed with it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what's going on here as well. It's a really great showcase of how you book a star. Yeah. I think absence makes the heart grow fonder as well. I think that's why I was immediately like, when I thought you were just talking about the past few weeks.
No.
Let's be honest, Solo's Bloodline 2.0, Bloodline Wolfpack kind of run has been hit and miss. I've liked, Jacob Fatu has been electric. It's such a shame he's injured. I hope it's not a too serious one. I don't actually know any of the details around that at the minute, but I've liked it. I've not loved it.
Yeah.
To use the old Louis Walsh X Factor parlance, you're not from this country, you don't know what I'm talking about. But it's kind of...
We've been waiting to get to here.
Yeah, and part of that was because of them not capitalizing on Solo Sikoa post John Cena victory. He sort of went a little bit cold here and there. But I think his work and his performance, at the very least, his physicality, his commitment to the character, has made Solo someone that you do want to boo in a good way. The "we want Roman" chants, being there. This whole business of him saying to Paul Heyman, who has also played his part brilliantly, and I can't wait to hear the first "ladies and gentlemen."
Yep.
That's going to be another one of those pops that's going to echo through the ether. I think Solo's done a good job of keeping us sort of in, if you know what I mean. And that's why Roman returning has had the impact it has. It doesn't quite make up for how big this feels compared to when he's not around. You know what I mean? That is something that they have struggled with a little bit. What happens when Roman's not here? They struggled when he was champ, and they'll struggle when he's not champ as well. Not as much because you've got Cody, but the Roman Reigns gap is felt, and that's why there is this hugely, positive reaction.
It is undeniable at this point that he feels like the biggest star in the company. Mm-hmm. And that's what they wanted for years and years and years, and it didn't feel like it. I want to go back to your point about like Steve Austin, because that has always been the name that gets brought up when it doesn't matter who it is, but I always have heard people say that if you're booking your top babyface, don't do anything to them that you wouldn't book to happen to Steve Austin. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that a top babyface can't face adversity or can't catch a beat down every once in a while. But it's an attitude type thing. I look at Becky Lynch when she was going into WrestleMania 35, with the three-way with Ronda and Charlotte. And she gets into that match because in her, I have to defend my title shot because Charlotte's been awarded it by Vince McMahon match at, I believe, Fastlane. Could have been Elimination Chamber, regardless. That match ends in DQ because Ronda comes down, wants to face Becky Lynch, causes a DQ, and it's now a three-way. And Becky isn't a badass, like, you don't get in my business, I can win this match anyway, I'll kick both of your asses. She just goes, I'm in the match, and walks off. And it all turned out fine for her, biggest women's star in the business, arguably. But at the time, it was like, that's not what a top babyface would do. That's not the reaction should be from a badass.
What's the reasons, though, that she was in that position? This is to your point. One of them is her standing up in the middle of the crowd with blood pouring down her face, being like, come and get me, I don't care, I'll batter you, whatever. The other one is, the other angle that I think about is the three of them fighting through the cars, and they're all like being restrained and they're kicking down door windshields and things like that. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Not always. Sometimes you do have to be a bit cerebral. And I'm really interested in the main event title picture elsewhere on this very program. So, and that's more cerebral.
Yeah.
But we do want catharsis in this moment. We do want that kind of like badass.
We always say, like, you have your various types of stories and you can want it to be super soap opera, you can want it to be super sports based, some mix of the two, whatever. But at the end of the day, wrestling is this physical thing that you want the person that you like to just kick ass. regardless of how you get there or where you're going after, you want the person you're cheering for to be like this really cool, kick-ass guy or gal. And we haven't had that from the top person in WWE all the time. So now when you've got Cody Rhodes, who is resilient and will kick ass, and Roman Reigns, who's now this badass, ooh, where's his allegiances, but we're going to cheer him because he's awesome type guy, I think there's a lot more to like at the top of the card in WWE now than there has been for much of the last 20 years, you know? So big thumbs up for this. Also, little side note, I found it very interesting that for a brief moment, Tama Tonga picks up the lei to give it to Solo Sikoa, and he stops. And he looks at that. I don't think Tama Tonga is going to try and be the new tribal chief at any point, but he's booking himself perhaps to have a little wrinkle at some point in the future.
At this stage, it's not the One Ring. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You hold it and you're like, there is power in this.
Yeah.
And
Anytime now. Anytime now. Any second now. Anytime now. I always wonder how much of a delay there. Hey! Oh, no, yep. It's... What's going on? Okay,
Are we
back? We're live? We're live, pal. We'll do it live. F it. Okay. Don't know what happened there.
I'm seeing myself move. Because the problem was, we're seeing whether or not we're live and we're staring at the thing, but we're not moving, which makes me not be able to see that it's moving. So I'm just going with it. Right.
You see, Dan, there's power in this spinning YouTube buffering circle.
Apparently there's power in this. Anyway, that was the should we before we get sidetracked again, that was kind of the summation of what we were talking about.
Pretty much.
We kind of got there.
We got there. The only other point I really wanted to make was that I think it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes for Roman to need backup. Because I think that's going to be where this will then lead into war games and that sort of thing.
Yeah. But we have a few months left until that.
This was the first week.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it should have happened now.
No. And we'll keep that sentence in mind for some people on the internet when we get to a later part of this program.
Absolutely.
What now?
I suppose we'll get to Ultrachats.
Yeah.
If you have any thoughts on the buffering of YouTube or any other wrestling related things, make sure you send in your Ultrachats. They will be read out, I promise. We will keep this stream going by hell or high water. So send in your chats at $5 and above to WrestleTalk.com/support. That being said, like James Dobinson has done, saying Roman's entrance was epic, felt on a level with The Rock. Reminded me of just how huge a star he is. He also feels a much bigger star than Cody right now, if I'm honest. Apart from that, though, SmackDown felt quite insignificant compared to Raw.
So the thing about Cody is interesting because when at SummerSlam and I'm seeing them stare at each other and you got Cody on the not the apron, the ropes with the belt, sort of looking at him and he's going three like this. I'm like, you guys do this forever. I love it. You've had your Austin Rock, your Cena Orton, your Flair, and who would you pick for Flair?
Steamboat.
Flair and Steamboat. That's what I was gonna say, but then I wasn't alive then.
You weren't?
Like, well, Hogan and Savage. Like, you've got all these like classic rivalries forever and ever are men. This is theirs. Like, you're not gonna be able to say Roman Reigns' name without Cody Rhodes, and vice versa.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because before that, like, you'd probably have said Roman's greatest rival was Seth. But I don't know. They don't really have like a classic match together. No WrestleMania main event.
Well, I think that's why.
That's kind of it. And now he's got his big rival.
Partly because it comes from.
You keep looking at the screen. I'm like, oh god, I'm scared.
Okay. But basically, we need to just keep constantly doing this. Well, I think that's maybe because they haven't. They started during. They're part of each other's lives, but in terms of the rivalry, in terms of the matches that I'll always look at, I think it is a Cody and Roman one. Maybe there's still time, and maybe Seth and Roman can have theirs. But like Seth, I don't know who Seth's is.
I also say
maybe that's
that
recency bias.
WWE would have let you believe that it was Brock, but all of us who live in the real world know that no one really cared about that
Never
for
worked.
most of it.
Yeah.
Rafael Garcia says, I don't care about any other match at all in. Big Stoke is coming back to the ring. Real hard-hitting Graps is coming back to pro wrestling. The bull rope match was fun, but should have gone last. And FTR versus the Outrunners should have been in 480p. I like that.
You absolutely love that. That's very much your energy.
We will very much get to that, the AEW Collision review, and the rest of SmackDown before the end of the show. Speaking of...
So SmackDown kicked off. We had Cody Rhodes come out. We had a little recap of SummerSlam, and then out comes Cody. And he's, by the way, doesn't SummerSlam feel like years ago?
Kinda.
Weird.
Yeah.
Weird how time works. He sort of says he wants to look to the future, and he wants to defend his title against in Berlin, which is in 3 weeks' time. Solo interrupts him, however, and comes out blaming Roman, says he wants another title shot. Cody gets pretty shirty with him, actually, and says, you couldn't get it done. You injured Jacob Fatu in the process, so nah. Bloodline sort of coming to the ring. There's a big ripple in the crowd, and it's because Kevin Owens has once again got Cody Rhodes back, slide into the ring with set chairs, hands one to Cody, and that's what makes the Bloodline retreat. Business done. American Nightmare, Kingdom plays, all good. Cody cuts the mic. He says, I don't want you to stop. I've got more things to say. Kevin, step back in the ring. He says, I want to let you know that you are next in line for the title shot. It's yours. And Kevin is not pleased about this, or at least he's not... he basically says, my win-loss record isn't good enough. I've not earned this title shot. And Cody's like, well, that doesn't really matter to me. You were in the trenches with me for this whole Bloodline thing. So it also doesn't sound like it matters to them. The crowd are cheering. The crowd seems to like it. So I'm going to go see Nick Aldis about it. And I'll go straight to that segment where they're in Nick Aldis' office, and Cody and Owens are both sort of pleading their cases. Owens is saying that he just hasn't earned it. He keeps saying, I don't deserve it. I haven't earned it. And Nick says it was a moot point anyway, because I'm giving the shot to Roman Reigns. We're going to have a conversation when Roman gets here. And it's this that fires Kevin Owens up a little bit. He has a rant about how Roman kept the belt. Well, Nick Aldis is like, well, he had the belt for 1,300 days. Like, he's champion for a long time. He says, rematch clause don't mean anything anymore, really. Like, I never got one when I lost the Universal Championship, which is the last time Kevin Owens had a world title, which by the way.
Insane.
Well, so then you also have the idea, he's talking about, like, Roman interfered, loads of people interfered for Roman. He doesn't deserve this. Go into that locker room, open the door, you'll see a million different people who deserve this before Roman Reigns. And it is that kind of fire that makes all this go, yeah, I am giving you the title shot. This has caused a bit of conversation, a bit of discourse over the weekend.
Discourse ruining my wrestling fun.
Yeah, some people sort of arguing, why would you ever say no to a world title shot? Which I will say that is not what Kevin Owens said. For my money, I really like the idea of him being self-doubt taking over, the anxiety of I haven't got a job done. Also, doesn't want to be patronized in this way. There is something a little bit patronizing about it. If you were to take it that way, I'm sure Cody's meaning is, no, you've been effed over a few times. You're also someone who has stood up for what's right. You stood up for Sammy. You stood up for me. You stood against these people. You stood up against the Prime bottle every single time you go near that hydration station. You deserve this. I quite like that kind of dynamic, and I'm intrigued to see where they're going to take it. It is only week one, so the idea that this is a success or not a success is irrelevant at this point. Let's get there before we assess it. But what do you think of the potential of the match, and what did you think of the angle?
Well, I mean, Kevin Owens in a big time match, one way or the other, is a thumbs up from me. Like that excites me. I find it very funny when you've got the people out there that will argue that, well, this has no story. I simply mute them and move on, because that, when you are one segment into a potential pay-per-view site, literally the first segment of SmackDown, and you're already going like, no, there's no story.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, move along, sir. I'm sorry that your goldfish attention span can't be appeased without a tribal trial of somebody. You know,
there is something about the race to the take. Like, people are racing to have an assessment of it. That has been, podcasts are part of breeding that environment. So I take it.
However, I find it to be a very interesting direction to go, because I hadn't anticipated this soon. I thought Cody and Kevin Owens might be a Survivor Series match. A little bit more time to get there. regardless, this is where we're going now. So then my brain starts working, and it's like you said earlier, where on one hand you've got the Bloodline story and this big kick-ass return of Roman Reigns and everybody's all hyped up on adrenaline, and then over here you have a more like introspective rivalry, and that doesn't have to be to everyone's taste. Not saying that everyone needs to like everything, but I do find it to be a very interesting way of telling this other story, because I saw a lot of people, I believe incorrectly theorizing, that Kevin Owens should have hit him with the chair and turned heel or whatever. And I'm like, no. That feels disingenuous to what Kevin Owens' character has been over the last 2 years, where he goes and he's really upset with Sami Zayn for having turned on the locker room or whatever to side with the Bloodline, and then not being one to quickly turn around and accept his forgiveness. And then he had to build to that match with the Usos at WrestleMania, because this isn't the same Kevin Owens that would turn on Sami Zayn and turn on Chris Jericho and turn on every single partner that he had ever had. However, it's still the Kevin Owens that has the self-doubt, the anxiety, because whether you want to look so deeply into it or not is up to you, but people have always said that Kevin Owens does all of these heel turns and turns on all of his partners because of those things, because of the self-doubt, because of the anxiety, because he can't let anybody get too close, and all these different things that are very deep personal character traits. And now we could be seeing a new layer to that, a new direction to take that, where you have a babyface who very much could have just taken that chair that he picked up in the ring as soon as Cody started talking and just smacked him with it and going like, yeah, I'll take your title shot and I'm going to take that title too and be the prize fighter and provide for my family, etc. But that's not the direction they're going. And I think your take on that, the patronizing sort of sense of it, is a really interesting way to go, because regardless through all of these things, Kevin Owens has always been someone with a lot of pride. And doesn't want to just be handed things, which is kind of hilarious given how we won the first Universal title and whatever. But that's an argument for another day.
One of the many times I thought the world was changing.
Yeah.
The tides were shifting.
Little did we all know Brock Lesnar and Goldberg later. But he doesn't want to be handed this thing. He wants to have earned it. And in his mind, he hasn't yet. So we've still got 3 weeks or so between now and the match. And how is his mindset going to change from, no, don't give me this title shot. I'll earn a title shot in due time. Okay, fine, I'll take it because you're going to give it to Roman Reigns, to getting to the point where he's like, no, I need to win this championship. I'm going to beat your ass, Cody Rhodes, blah, 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 which I'm sure we'll get to. I don't know how they're going to do that. And it is a more intriguing direction to go than setting up somebody else to just have a good match, I think.
I think there are so many different ways you can go about it. I did see a lot of people talk about maybe a heel turn in the offing, and we know Kevin Owens plays a heel really well. I just don't necessarily think it always has to be heel. I think sometimes you can have a really interesting two friends. One of them the champion, the undisputed champion. The other one is, someone who has taken a lot of hits and maybe has that level of self-doubt, and they're trying to compete. And it's interesting. And it's not if you're sitting there and you're saying, why would you ever turn down a championship match? This weekend, I had an audition for a drama school, and I had to fight. I found out I had it on Friday. I had to submit it yesterday. I had 2 days to get all the material together, to film it, record it, learn a whole dance routine in 2 hours and get it done. It do take nerve. And there is a time in my life, part of the reason it's happening now is because I spent a lot of time not having the self-belief, not having the self-confidence to actually go through with it, and you do say no to some opportunities like that. If you're not of that mind, congratulations. It sounds like you must have a much easier life, or a much more a less obstacled life. But some of us do have that kind of self-doubt, and especially if you want to weave in any of Kevin's real life family drama that's happened. Recent drama is not the best word for it, but that kind of real life stuff. It's an interesting potential angle.
There are plenty of reasons for Kevin to have not wanted this match right now.
Or not felt he deserved. I think there's a difference between saying no thank you and I don't deserve this.
Yeah. You can make as many arguments for or against this as you want, I think. But I'm really looking forward to the match. I think it should be a very interesting direction to go. I had one other point that I wanted to make about it, and no, I can't remember. That's it. me saying this about, no, it would be disingenuous for him to have just turned on Cody Rhodes or whatever. That's not to say that if the right buttons are pushed, he can't do that.
Exactly.
In the future. That's not to say that he has to now be a babyface from now until eternity. But I do think we are in a bit of a different era here where there's a little bit more thought put into, oh, well, Kevin's a good heel to go against the top babyface and give him a win. You know, I think there's a lot more to play within a character perspective with Kevin Owens, who has been a really interesting character throughout his WWE tenure, good booking or not. And I think a more nuanced reason for a heel turn than just, I'm going to be the guy that stabs everyone in the back, I think will do wonders for him, potentially, if they decide to go that way.
And we will see what way they do indeed decide to go over the next few weeks. Meanwhile, in the tag division, we have A-Town Dan undertaking on the Street Profits in a sort of qualifying. Is it number one contenders qualifying?
It's Triple H's little two qualifiers and then a number one contenders deal.
It's a fairly standard tag match, to be fair, but the end was quite fun. Montez Ford kicks Waller on the outside, and Dawkins hits the pounce, which yeets Waller over the barricade. They go back into the ring for a Doomsday blockbuster on Austin Theory and get the win. Not really a lot to say about this match, to be honest.
Not much.
Yeah.
And I will be perfectly honest. Like, I've had my gripes with the tag division this year. A lot of them, in fact, given that they've rarely been a focus on SmackDown hardly at all. And it's meant that the Bloodline beating DIY after like a 3-4 week title reign didn't really mean a lot. We're now coming out of that, and I have quite a bit of a gripe with how a lot of the teams in SmackDown's tag division have been presented as of late. I was told by a lot of people to let it play out when it came to the Street Profits, and we're now here a year later, and they're the same old Street Profits they've always been, and that trio with Bobby Lashley went absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, it went nowhere because it was going somewhere, and then they changed course because of a reaction rather than just leaning in, and that is something that we've talked about elsewhere, this sort of unwillingness to go with it. Sometimes, every now and again, and you get a great WrestleMania documentary out of it, they'll go with it, they'll pivot, but in certain instances, they do seem to just stick rigidly to the plan. And it's nice to have a plan after many, many years of not. But this was one example where it was like, that had potential, and now we're just back at square one.
Absolutely. And they said on commentary...
But with beaver.
Yeah. Well, that was it. On commentary, they said, and I know they have to promote their characters and whatever, but I think Corey said, like, oh, the amount that BFAB has provided for the Street Profits, their new attitude. I was like, what are you talking about, bro? It's been a year since their attempted heel turn, more aggressive take. Yeah, it was last summer.
Good God.
With Bobby Lashley, and it's gone nowhere, and it led nowhere, and it was a trios feud with the Final Testament that sucked, and now we're just back with the Street Profits. I'm not saying I want them to break up by any means, but for God's sake, could we give Montez Ford a run with a singles title? Like, make him a U.S. champion or an IC champion or something like that, just to have something different with these guys. And it doesn't help that on the other side of this match was the A-Town Down Under thing, which I simply do not care about, you know, and we'll get to a bit of the reason for that later, but they've been breaking up for a year.
Not a year.
Yeah, it's getting close.
It's not getting that close. They've been breaking up. They've been breaking up for about 5 minutes.
No,
I'm joking. But they haven't.
It's been a minute.
They won the titles at Mania. They've been breaking up after Mania.
No, they've been breaking up since before that.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
It's always like, I'm gonna shove you in. I'm gonna get out of the way of a move, and the other one's gonna take it. Like, sow the seeds of the eventual breakup. But they've been doing that the whole time.
I don't
with
remember, I will allow it. I will concede to you.
It happens at Elimination Chamber, I'm fairly sure.
Meanwhile, we've got Tiffany backstage, and she's preparing for Nia Jax's title celebration next week. She's got her custom briefcase over her shoulder, which I absolutely love as an alternative to the custom briefcase trope. Chelsea and Piper Niven come up, and they suggest that Tiffany's only hanging around with Nia to keep the champion close for a cash-in. I wonder if someone said that on a podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Say the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Like, in case anyone doesn't get it. Here's what's happening.
But then it devolves into bickering about outfits. I like Chelsea Green very much, and also Piper Niven. Jade and Alba Fyre having a match now. Jade Cargill. You were talking about the Hangman Chapel Roan video. I saw a video of they were in a mall somewhere, and Alba and Isla were taking pictures with the belts in one of those like photo booths.
Sure.
And Jade and Bianca are like, we're gonna batter them, and so what you then get is them go either side of the booth, and then a series of pictures of just them being like, and I thought it was very funny. So I'm here for this little unit, as I was from the very beginning. But I only got 2 minutes worth of match here, which was annoying to me. Alba manages to lock in hang on. Jade has this humongous wrist lock, one of those SmackDown Here Comes the Pain wrist locks, I always think of them as. And she wriggles out into a sunset flip, a springboard to an DDT, gets a near fall. Then Alba manages to lock in, of all things, a Black Widow. AJ Lee return confirmed, and is reaching for Isla to get a bit of extra pull on it, but Bianca interrupts that. Jade wriggles out, muscles Alba up, gets the win. 2-minute match is fine. Not enough.
I think they made an announcement this week that
they're having a women's speed
there's
division.
going to be a women's speed championship, and boy, you'd hardly know the difference.
Yep. They would be thrilled to have an extra minute on their matches.
Jesus Christ.
The post angle, though, is, I'm here for this. Blair Davenport comes out, and they have a numbers advantage over the faces, and it's Naomi that makes the save, the big three reuniting from WrestleMania. And now we have a whole bunch of stables with 3 women in them, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Damage Control, we've got the Lesbian Shield, we've got the Party Girls and Lyra Valkyria, we have Alba, Isla, and Blair, and now the big 3.
God forbid we get more belts.
Unless they're just going to add 1 to the women's tag belts, and that's the solution to the division. I don't know.
Honestly, why not?
Yeah.
It's something different. I'm not going to do the whole song and dance here. The women's tag titles mean nothing. Like, Alba Fyre and Isla Dawn had like 0 wins in 18 months or whatever when they won the titles. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they actually have a win since. They may do, but
last week.
Well, sure, but you know what I mean. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. They don't matter. They're keeping the belts warm for when Jade and Bianca win them back, presumably. I'm not a fan of having one of your tag title holders be beaten by their opponent in a singles.
This handily.
Yeah, it's just like, why are they champions? They are champions because they went to Scotland. That is the start and end of the reason. Mm. And that was also several months ago now. And we've just kind of been like slowly putting off going anywhere with it. Mm. We're in the exact same place now than we were the week after Clash. Except now Blair Davenport and Naomi are back in the mix. And I like Naomi being back in the mix because it's the WrestleMania trio. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a bit more there with that. I like them as a package anyway. But I don't see the point of where we are with all of it.
And ultimately, the problem with all of this, and it's on Raw, it's on SmackDown as well, is that unless you give it time, you're not going to be able to rehabilitate or reheat. I think you can reheat anything. And I think that we've seen that. And it's another one of those things where some people perhaps might feel I over praise, maybe, I don't know, but like there's something where we've seen many times that Triple H's booking has this ability to take someone from ice cold to red hot. Look at Bronson Reed on Raw this past week.
Sure.
There is the ability to reheat, but you need to give it, especially a division like this, because there are biases that exist in the wrestling fandom. And
it's
there
a
are
self-fulfilling prophecy if you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't work because you don't let it work, and therefore it doesn't work, and you're in a circle.
LA Knight comes out, he's got a little promo to make, he's over big time, gets a "You Deserve It" chant. He says he has new music, well, it's the same music but with a little refresh. Yeah. Which because I quite like, except I missed the throughout the whole song because I quite liked it. He says people have asked him how it felt to beat Logan Paul at home, but that doesn't matter to him. Calling him champ is the most important thing. Being a champion makes him a marked man, so he's going to take on the next guy. And the next guy, and the next guy, and Santos Escobar interrupts.
I want to take that again.
Santos Escobar interrupts. The crowd chant "You suck," to which he responds, "No, you suck. And you suck, sir," which really popped me. Thank you very much for that. He doesn't think LA Knight with the title is the right fit. He says Knight's glory will be the opening act for his US title run, with everybody saying Escobar C.
I liked that.
He's on it. He knows what he's doing. LA Knight, however, is not having this and points out that he has an number one contenders match with the guy who'll be down in a second. But even if he wins that, he won't take the title. He's very confident in himself, is LA Knight. And I am just thrilled that we have the title back.
It feels rejuvenated immediately.
Yeah. And a division with something to fight for, which we'll get into when we do the match.
Absolutely. I thought the promos here were actually like quite good.
Yeah.
this was the most I've cared about a U.S. title win in I do not know how long.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I like LA Knight. I'm not the ones who are going to Crown Jewel last year going, he needs to beat Roman Reigns, of which there were some.
There were.
I'm really happy he's gotten his moment, but also I think it does kind of show that when you've got someone like this who is starved for a moment and you finally give it to them, it not only gives them the moment, but it also brings the title up. Because who cared about the U.S. title before this?
Oh, it wasn't there.
It wasn't there. And now I have got like a slight gripe with the match that follows, but it's exactly what we were saying the lead into SummerSlam. Now this division that is really strong, this mid-card division on SmackDown, they have a prize to fight for, and therefore direction. And immediately you go from this into the feud or into the match that follows, which we will get to now. And immediately it just felt more interesting than the similar matches we have been getting over the past month, 2 months or so, that I have again praised because they've been good and entertaining, but ultimately feeling directionless. Now it feels like there's a direction, so thumbs up.
But before we get to that match, and this is very important, people have been wondering where Giovanni Vinci's been. He was obviously kicked out of Imperium and drafted to SmackDown, and people have been very concerned about him. Turns out he was in Las Vegas, having a holiday. Good for him. Would that we all could have a little Vegas holiday now and again. Looks like he is making a return to the kind of like suave, rich life gimmick from NXT.
Yeah.
And I'm all about it.
Vinci.
Exactly. I would like it to happen sooner rather than later, because otherwise I still feel like he didn't necessarily need to be kicked out of Imperium. I actually love watching Vinci wrestle, so the more he can get in, the better.
I'm not gonna dip into the conspiracy well.
What's the conspiracy well?
I've heard reasons.
But you'll have to tell me off air. We've got 2 shows to get through. Yeah. Meanwhile, we cut back to the ring where Andrade is taking on Santos Escobar. This is the number 1 contendership for the United States Championship. Legado del Fantasma are out as well, but they're taken out pretty quickly after getting involved by Apollo Crews and Baron Corbin. They sort of brawl off into the crowd. Meanwhile, Escobar has control. They go up to the top rope, jockeying for a sort of superplex. Andrade wriggles out into a sunset bomb. Escobar keeps getting away, so Andrade hits a moonsault to the floor. Back in the ring, 3 Amigos for one of many 2 counts in this match. It was a near-full specialty. They're back up top for a slugfest, and Escobar hits this super poison Rana for a 2. Delicious. Andrade gets control back, has a double moonsault. Carmelo Hayes comes out at this point then for a distraction that doesn't work very well, as Andrade is able to hit a spinning elbow, which I was convinced was going to be it. It was not. Then we are back to Andrade in control. Escobar's in the corner. He's going to hit the double knees, but Hayes pulls Escobar out of the way, and that gives Escobar enough energy to, or advantage rather, to roll up Andrade, hold onto the tights for the win. He's the number 1 contender. I, first of all, love the match. I think anytime you have a competitive match, there's no shame in losing, because you have given it a real good go. Especially if you want a competitive division, it's all about taking advantage of where you can get it, things here and there. Even like Djokovic has a bad day now and again, and we'll go out in the tennis. But so that's where I stand on winning and losing. I also think the idea of, Carmelo Hayes and Andrade not being done is not the worst either. If Santos is going to have a little match there with LA Knight, you've got Andrade with a very justifiable reason to be like, hang on, I'm next in line. I almost had that and I was cheated out of it. I'm going to deal with Carmelo. If I get the win in that, now I'm next. As to your point, a division is built. Indeed. Division is here. And I appreciated that. Tell me your gripe.
It's not a big gripe. I just feel a little bit more strongly on like the losing of Andrade here, because we spent a good amount of time weeks ago talking about the match that Andrade had with Carmelo, and at the time there not really being a direction for them to go, and it was more just like, here's a showcase match and someone's going to win and try and build some momentum. Now that's not to say that winning a match then has to lead into a winning streak that leads into a title match, whatever. But at the same time, I felt like we were going somewhere with that, and we have then spent the prior month leading up to SummerSlam with Santos kind of being a bit of the third wheel of the Logan Paul and LA Knight feud, where they needed LA Knight. They needed to give LA Knight somebody to beat up in the lead up to Logan Paul. So they just had him beat up Santos time and time again, which I guess is a way to build up your first challenger. But it does kind of feel like Andrade was a stronger option as a challenger, and I'm sure we'll get that. But like I said, it's a slight gripe. I just feel like it's a bit dissonant with where people are going directionally.
It's so interesting because I feel like there's only one championship, right? There's only, like, not everybody can have it, and if you want to have a decent run with it or a short run with it, like, you know, you've got to make those choices, and people are going to lose along the way. I don't see this as a negative for Andrade personally.
No, not
because
really.
the match I think was still good and competitive and strong, and
I don't think it makes Andrade look weak in particular. I don't see it as like a negative on Andrade. I feel a little bit more like the TV leading into SummerSlam didn't really mean much. Is kind of how I feel about it. And there are little bits that we've been taking. Obviously, all these guys have been involved with each other, and you wouldn't have this without that and all that. But like I said, it's a slight gripe. It's a nitpick. We'll get there. But the match itself was really good. I'm glad that these guys were getting a chance to mix it up together. You know, I'm sure we will see all of these men fight for the U.S. title at some point. So, and by then it won't have mattered at all. So we'll see. I think and like I said, I want LA Knight to have a decent length run here. And he needs people that he can beat. And I probably feel a little bit stronger that he can beat Santos than he can beat Andrade, if that makes sense.
I think it would be worse for Andrade to lose the title match now than it would be for him to have a promo and then lose a title match in about 2 months' time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's where I sit with it.
Yeah.
DIY backstage cutting a promo. They say they're ready to get their titles back. It is a little bit stilted. And at one point, Johnny Gargano commits the cardinal sin. We do not do this as performers, which is that he lets me know that something has gone wrong. I think Ciampa has missed a line. I think Gargano just sort of goes, You're gonna no Johnny, it's that and messing with your costume. You don't do those things. But then they're getting the one shot, they go through Gorilla, they're off out, and we get a tribute video to the late Kevin Sullivan talking about his creativity, and then it is DIY versus Pretty Deadly. This is the last thing we have to talk about on the show because obviously the main event is Solo and Roman. It's a second tag team qualifier. It's another fairly standard tag team match where kind of the winner's going in, to be honest with you, based on presentation. Double powerbomb gets a near fall. They go for a shatter machine, but it gets broken up. They have a bit of a brawl. Pretty Deadly signal for their finish, but it gets cut off. Then DIY hit the shatter machine and a meet in the middle for the win. So I assume next week, or maybe a little bit down the line, it's going to be DIY versus the Street Profits.
That sounds like a fun match to me. You know, I'd like a little bit more, I don't know, characterization from the teams in this division. Make it all feel a little bit more important. But yeah, in general, DIY and Street Profits, that sounds like a good 15 minutes to me.
Yeah. And that's the show. A good table-setting episode, I thought, heading up to the feast that is Bash at Berlin.
Yes. My overall feelings based on this show are the things that were impacted by SummerSlam feel very fresh and very exciting.
Yeah. And
I'm very excited to see how they continue to develop. Otherwise, most of the show is the same as it's been for the last 3 months. I
saw a graphic of post-WrestleMania champions now. And I think the only person who still has his belt, if I'm not wrong, is Cody. Everyone else has every title change. And this is where I'm talking about, like, a title change now and again is good because it makes you feel things are fresh. Like, I'm all for a long reign, but you've got to find the balance between a long reign and a couple of short ones just to keep things alive.
Yeah. And I think we will look back fondly on each reign individually, but we were also going through a time where you had Bianca champion for a year, Rhea then champion for a year, Gunther a champion for almost 2 years, Roman champion for 4 years.
Yeah.
So it was like we're kind of now itching for some more rapid title changes.
And rapid doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a month. It doesn't even have not transitionals. You can do a little back and forth as long as it is compelling and competitive. Like the idea of, like, let's say Carmelo and Andrade had a back and forth series over the US title, and you can do interesting things. And then you'd probably want to have a while with a long reign with the US title to keep things interesting. You know, Austin Theory was another one. 270 days he was champion.
Need not remind me of that. But yes, a good SmackDown. I would still say a thumbs up. For sure, the things that got me excited got me very excited. So I'm happy for the direction. Let's get out of this no Roman Reigns lull that we've been in and get the Bloodline story going and kicked into a high gear. That being said, we're going to turn our attention now to AEW Collision. We are nearing AEW All In next weekend. Boy, howdy, we're going, and I can't believe I'm going to see Danielson probably for the last time live.
I mean this with all the politeness and respect. I hope so.
Well, yeah.
The poor guy's battered down. I hope he
That's it.
I don't love anything enough
Yeah.
that much. But can I just say, since you just invoked the name of All In, this time last year on the Monday show, I was whinging and moaning, and I still think justified, and I still think
Absolutely.
not alone in what I perceived was a weird dissonance between the fact that this was such a massive deal, and it was a massive deal to me as a fan, and what they were presenting with is, Punk being like, why am I the only one talking about Wembley and all of that stuff. They have done such a fantastic job of making this card feel important, exciting, bits and bobs. There was a match made on this show for the 0 Hour that I went, yeah, fine, great.
Yeah.
As referenced in a chat. I'm seeing, I was looking at the card earlier on. No, we're going to get a casino
Gauntlet match.
I'm all about that.
That's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, it's going to feel great in the arena. Danielson, obviously, the Mercedes match, the Tony match. There's so much going on here that make it feel big time. Just them mentioning it regularly. So, yeah, props.
Yeah,
props to you.
A big improvement over last year, I think. We'll see about the show itself, but I have high hopes. We opened this show with Darby Allin teaming with Hologram to take on the premier athletes of Tony Nese and Josh Woods. Smart Mark Sterling did a promo on the way to the ring, talking about ever since they've come to this town, everything's been going not our way. I've broken my arm, and we've been losing matches, and that's going to change. And Ari Daivari. No, it is Arya Daivari.
Yeah.
There's one or the other. His name switched over the years. He cut a little promo to cut it off that after tonight, Darby Allin, who likes to color his face white and black, he's going to be black and blue when they're done with him. And I was like, yeah.
Color comedy.
Simple little promo. Love it. This, again, was a hologram showcase. They're kind of running with a bit of an undefeated streak gimmick here. I don't know if he's going to go the full Jade Cargill route with it, but he's 3-0 going into this match. He's 4-0 coming out of it, and they have made a point to say he hasn't lost a match. He's 3-0 undefeated, and now he's 4-0 undefeated. Wow. So however long that lasts, this seems to be the direction they're going with him. He, again, was sort of the highlighted performer here. They did a lot of kind of wacky lucha stuff, good lucha things, where you had what looked like was going to be, I believe, a German suplex or something it was going to be a sunset flip, and Tony Nese stops the rotation, pulls Hologram back, who then lands on Josh Woods' shoulders, and then twists around, kicks Tony Nese in the process, and hits a tilt-a-whirl DDT. It was wacky. There was a lot of that sort of stuff. Of course, you had Darby Allin going nuts. They were really hyping up the match from Rampage, where he got slammed around by the Butcher. If you haven't seen it, go see it. There's a lot of punishment to be taking on Rampage, but that's Darby Allin. He can't go at half speed. Ultimately, though, this ended with a crucifix pin that people on wrestling Twitter threw another fit about, because it's what they do. It was fine. They did the typical get out of one thing, spin around, hook the arms, and then roll over into a crucifix. And he pinned Josh Woods 1, 2, 3. I thought this was a fine little opener. We have both agreed that this probably should have been switched to the middle of the show.
Oh, way to take my point before.
I'm sorry.
I
we'll get there
anything.
then. This should have gone in the middle of the show. I'll leave the rest for you to say.
I thought it was an interesting choice to. First of all, Darby and Hologram feels thrown together. It's just a case of getting people on the show, I suppose. And if you're going to do that, absolutely fine. And the match was good, and a crucifix pin is a perfectly legitimate way to win a wrestling match. But this for me wasn't a show opener when there was a cut and dry show opener elsewhere on the show.
I agree. But still, a fine little deal here.
Yeah.
My goodness, we had a hell of a match. We had a promo that was voiced over by Dustin Rhodes. No one better to voice over this promo. Talking about the Texas Bull Rope match and talking about the history between Thunder Rosa and Deonna Purrazzo leading into this here match. And we had said previously that after the Lumberjill match that we didn't really know how much steam this had left. Where, it feels like a feud that's been going on forever, but also one that I've not ever seen that much care be thrown about.
Yeah.
Because this is always linked back to Deonna Purrazzo challenged Toni Storm at Revolution and lost, and then Thunder Rosa was supposed to be her tag partner, help her get another shot, but Thunder Rosa kind of then took that opportunity to work her way into the title picture, and Deonna Purrazzo felt slighted by that. That led to the match, I believe, at Dynasty between Thunder Rosa and Toni Storm. It was a good match, but Deonna Purrazzo got involved, and there's been tension between them ever since. Deonna turns heel. Several matches later, we end up here. This is the 5th match they've had together, and it was a Texas Bull Rope match. I didn't particularly care that much about their lumberjack match, but my God, this was a hell of a gimmick match. You had Thunder Rosa busted open in the early going, bleeding, and it was off of another one of those turnbuckle shots as they were strapped together with the bull rope, either side of the turnbuckle, with the rope then in between on the floor, and Thunder Rosa gets pulled into the post and just starts going. They go to commercial, they come back. There's a lot of really intense, crazy-ass spots in this match, whether it's getting slammed down off the top rope into a pile of chairs. Thunder Rosa put a chair in front of Deonna's face in the corner and then went and drop-kicked it, and I screamed. In the office.
It was pretty vicious, wasn't it?
It was real nasty looking, but also in that kind of like, violence kind of way. They end up setting up a table in the corner, and Deonna has Thunder Rosa laid out on it, is trying to go for it, but then gets bulldogged off the top rope through the table, and Thunder Rosa then picks her up, hits her little pile driver, and gets the win.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there has ever been a bad women's hardcore match in AEW.
Mm-hmm.
They always just go buck-ass wild, like every single time. Whether it's Anna Jay and the Bunny having their tag lights out match on Rampage a couple years ago that was like the best match of Rampage that year or whatever. And of course you got Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker. And anytime these lasses go out there and just blow everybody away with this thing, I do think this is what it should be all the time. Not the hardcore violence aspect, but this much like fire and drive and time being given for them to be able to rise to such an occasion, because they will. And they took a feud that I didn't particularly care too much about and really made me care about it at the end. And thumbs up for that. I hope we get to see Thunder Rosa kind of elevated back to a prominent position. Maybe you do Thunder Rosa and Mercedes after All In, if Mercedes keeps the belt as like a TBS title program. That seems like a match that I'd look forward to. I really enjoyed this.
It was one of those things where, you know, when you're given an opportunity and you just sort of run with it. To your point, like, my interest in this feud hasn't been massive. But our commentary, I thought, did a really excellent job of putting over why you might use, or what a difference maker the cowbell can be, and indeed was, when you know, she gets battered with it, and that's what causes the crimson mask to cover up the other mask. And they also mentioned a point of, and it's fairly obvious to say, first time in a bull rope match for the pair of these two. So you're like, hey, we're going to give you a bull rope match on Collision this week. Okay, great. What can we do? And they go and they create that, and it was chaotic and creative and vicious, and as is always going to happen when it's your first time experiencing something, you know, not perfect, but did everything it needed to do. Feels like a very much door closed now. Finish that one. Job done. Happy days. And All In feels like another one of those places where it could be like a nice, clean ending. What's next for various people? And one of those can be Thunder Rosa.
I want those kind of shows a little bit more often than we're getting in wrestling. I feel like everything is being stretched out like 1 month too far in a lot of cases. So a lot of like, and done and reset, new direction. I think it helps. Obviously exceptions, but regardless. I also just want to put over, I think it's a very interesting dichotomy that I've got going on, where I think we are strapped together by a thing, whether it's a strap or a bull rope or a dog collar or whatever. That for a pinfall is like a top 5 stipulation in wrestling per my taste. The exact same format, but we have to touch all 4 corners of the ring, is my least favorite wrestling gimmick match. In the world.
It takes ages. And
like,
it's like, ugh.
We're gonna blow off this blood feud with playing red light, green light.
You know, I always like a definitive, you know, moment rather than like a a mini game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I always love it because this version of it, where it is we are strapped together and must be won by pinfall or submission, it feels like what every other there's nowhere to run stipulation is meant to accomplish, whether it is a lumberjack or a steel cage or whatever, where they inevitably run away or there's interference or whatever. And not to say there couldn't be interference in this, but it is just you cannot run away from your opponent, settle it. And I love that. It's fantastic. We had an unbelievably great little video package, which might be the best thing that I've seen on both shows. Yeah. Which was the Outrunners, who have been absolutely plucked out of 1985 and stuck in modern day on a grainy-ass VHS tape cassette video package of them doing really wacky workouts and saying, we're going to take what you got and brother and all this. And then they faced FTR. In a match that should have been in standard definition.
Well, just quickly on the package, I had just sort of watched the tail end of SmackDown and seen the Kevin Sullivan tribute. So then when I'm like getting my things together and writing a couple of notes, and then I look and I see this video, I'm like, oh, they're doing a sort of tribute to that kind of, because the Kevin Sullivan tribute also featured a lot of grainy footage of, and his characters were always so like big and hype and all of that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh wait, take me a second. And then I see it, and I love it. Sets them apart instantly. There was a lot of great packages on this show, actually. A few production elements I really want to give praise to. And this was one of them, because it just sets them apart and it makes me go, oh, it's those guys. You know, and ultimately, that's what a gimmick is supposed to do. And I know how much you enjoy wrestling in standard definition. Personally, I appreciate a little bit of clarity in my camera. But
they should have changed the aspect ratio.
Well, it then becomes Tony Storm who's doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Yeah. But there was a reason for Tony Storm to do it as well. If they've seen Sunset Boulevard, she's got a director. So like the idea of Luther being the director was always my big thing. But yes, since you've established that people can have their own personalized production, you might as well. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciated this next match. I didn't think it was amazing by any means. You know?
No, but it felt like watching a wrestling match in the 80s.
Yeah. And you know what? I like a variety pack on a wrestling show, and this was your 80s tribute band wrestling match.
Well, I remember I saw the Iron Claw. I think I said this a while ago. I think it was FTR versus the new Dynamite Kid, and I remember saying like, I always wondered what it would be like to watch like a Kevin Von Erich or a wrestling match in the 70s, and I got to, because I watched that match, and the same thing happened here.
Yeah, 100%. You know, so this was your standard kind of tag match. They went back and forth a bit, and then FTR won with the Shatter Machine, which I don't know when the change happened, but is just called the Shatter Machine again. It was like the big rig for a long time in honor of Brody Lee, and then they just sort of stopped calling it that. I don't know when that happened, but I noticed it today. Yeah. So, hey-oh, it doesn't matter. It's an awesome name. Love the Shatter Machine. Backstage, we had Lexi Nair interviewing Kip Sabian. And
my boy, my twin.
Yeah. He, of course, has been feuding with Nick Wayne of such. And Sabian says, like, you know, this is about me. You know, this is about my dad. I've been trying to make a name for myself, you know, rack up some wins and such. Nick Wayne interrupts him and asks him, like, why are you still in my business? I'm Nick Wayne. I'm the youngest ever crowned AEW champion. You know, why are you so obsessed with me? I understand. You know, you want a piece of this, but after 5 years, you're still a nobody. Ooh, the crowd boos. He says, I'm tired of all of this. I'm going to beat you on Rampage, and I guarantee that your dad died a loser, and I'm going to leave you the same way. Whatever. I really like Nick Wayne. I get that you got to have like sort of your little introduction feud for him. You know, this is a baby steps feud. He's getting his little promo time. He's getting to practice, that sort of thing. He's wrestling on a TV stage, which you need to do, and he has done, and he's going to continue to do and get his reps in, and he's really good and everything. That's all this is. It sort of works for that. I don't have any other thoughts on it. I do not care for Kip Sabian. You know, he's fine, but he's the most fine guy I think they have on their roster.
I think it's a great look. I don't, I don't really have anything either. There was a little part of me that was like later on in the show, it's like, well, is this going to go far enough that like Kip Sabian's going to be involved in the trios thing? Like, I
Right.
don't know, like what, but yeah, as you've kind of summed it up pretty well there. I think like, you know, for a Rampage feud,
Yeah.
this is a solid, you know, put him with Dolph Ziggler kind of energy.
Yeah. That's
And
all
if
there
you're
is
going to
to
be
it.
Nick Wayne and you're going to be 19 years old, it's wrestling these kind of people, getting these reps in, and spending time with Christian Cage is going to really set you up for a bright future.
Absolutely. We had an interesting match that I was very confused about, which was Roosh versus Preston Vance. Now, they showed this graphic up during an earlier segment, and I went, huh. I guess they broke up at some point. You know, LFI just kind of stopped being a thing at a certain point, and I don't really know when that was. I guess it was when Andrade got taken off TV the first time, you know, with the Sammy Guevara fight. And then he came back on Collision a while later, but he was never put back together with Roosh.
Yeah.
Which always struck me as a bit bizarre, but okay, let's go a different direction. But then Roosh and Preston Vance stopped being associated with one another too. And then they were put together, and they're both heels still, and they were acknowledging one another as like former partners and stuff, where Preston Vance came out and he did the LFI pose. And then during the match, he went for Roosh's bull's horns finish, the drop kick in the corner. And he said, "You mess with the bull, you get the horns," and then gave him one of these. And I was like, where has this match come from? You know? Like, I don't even think it was really that good. They kind of lost each other a few times. The communication seemed to be a little bit off. You know, he went for that imitation of Roosh's finish, and Roosh kind of chucked him over his head, but he didn't quite go over. It was a messy bump. And, like, Roosh got the win. I don't know what exactly they're doing with Roosh at the moment. He seems to be working his way into the Don Callis family, or is in the Don Callis family. It's just kind of a move that's happened here, but a bizarre direction with this one. You know? I don't know. I was a bit lost on this.
It was when my mind started to wander a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's that thing of not feeling like it has many stakes, I think.
It's really all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean, Roosh is great. Like,
Yeah.
I'll watch Roosh any day of the week, but, you know.
Put Preston Vance back on, like, Ring of Honor and give him a redemption arc with the Dark Order or something like that. Give him something to do. That might be, like, regressive for him, but he's better than doing nothing. Then we had quite an interesting match, if you ask Twitter.
Oh, yeah. And this is where I saw this match first.
Yeah. So, you had your AEW World's Champion, Swerve Strickland, with Prince Nana, coming down to the ring. And he comes out and he says, like, "Texas, what's up? I need to stay sharp because we're 2 weeks away from Wembley Stadium, where I'm going to own the legacy of Bryan Danielson. I need to stay sharp, so I'm issuing an open challenge. Anybody that wants some to keep me loose and warm and ready, get your ass out here." And he hands the mic over to Nana, and he kind of says a little bit more of that. It's like, "This is the most dangerous man in all of AEW, so make sure that you know that when you're stepping out here that he means business." And whose music should hit but Tomohiro Ishii?
And I'm sure you got very excited.
This is, well, yeah, of course. This is awesome. This is Tomohiro Ishii, and apparently that's a controversial opinion in 2024. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just looking at the wrong threads of Twitter of people being cranky because they actually don't like wrestling that much. And that's not to say that if you dislike something...
Well, I mean, I will say looking at Twitter for an opinion is
Yeah,
it's
100%.
a fool's errand.
Yeah. But genuinely, if you dislike seeing Tomohiro Ishii go out there and have a really fun match, if you're going to call that the death of AEW, which is hilarious given what we've been through over the last 2 years, then I'm just convinced that you don't actually like wrestling. That's my point, you know? Because this match was awesome. This match I thought was really, really fun. This match was your AEW World Champion taking on call him a big star. He's never pushed as a big star, but he's adored as a big star from your, partner promotion, coming in, who's in for the summer, and he goes and wants to step up and get a shot. I've seen some people going like, well, why didn't Hangman be the one to answer this if it means so much to him? and all that, and I'm just telling myself that Hangman wasn't in the building. You know, wasn't.
It's wrestling. You don't think too hard about it. Like sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like in this case, either Hangman wasn't in the building, or he does want it, but he wants it not just like on a random night in the middle of an esports arena. Like we're all complicated beings.
That aside, I thought this match was just so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from someone who obviously adores Tomohiro Ishii. Genuinely, if you look at his body of work, I think he is, however long you want to make this list, in ring, he's one of the best wrestlers there's ever been. From a pure quality of work standpoint and consistency standpoint, he's one of the best. He's fantastic. He's a bit over the hill because, my God, that style, you can't wrestle it forever. And he's in his late 40s. He's a late bloomer. But I love this man. So they go out there and they start doing their wrestling, and they're grappling a little bit, having a bit of a standstill because it was immediate. Like, Swerve heard the music and went, that's quite a challenge I now have in front of me. This was a warm-up, and like, this might not be a fun day of work, was kind of the story he was telling with his face. And they go back and forth, and they're doing all these different bits, and they do the classic, you know, throwing a few forearms to Ishii, who steps into them, and then this led to just a chop from Ishii, and Swerve countered and dumped Ishii on his head. Apparently that 45-second clip was the death of AEW as we know it, but we're not going to listen to those people, so they're not worth listening to. This match, so much fun, and I keep saying that because it's two of my favorite guys.
Because it was
really fun. They traded lariats, they traded suplexes, and Ishii hit a superplex on Swerve, and Swerve went for a house call but missed, and Ishii went for a sliding lariat, and there were a number of near falls and this and that, and finally Swerve managed to hit the house call and get the win. To me, this is a perfect use of Ishii. If you've got Ishii as your foreign exchange student for the summer, you got him for a few months, get him to put over your world champion in an entertaining back and forth match. No complaints whatsoever.
It's
except
so funny.
For perhaps
the placement.
It's placement.
I was gonna say there's so many things that I could maybe, if I was feeling particularly grumpy and down about it, I could be like, well, this is a problem for me, like, you know. But then they'd all have a counter. The only one that I have is if it's why is your world champion in the middle of the show?
Yeah.
Have him open the show. Have him make it. It's one of those things that, you know, it stops him feeling like a big world champion star. There are plenty of reasons that he does feel like that. I want to be abundantly clear, and I think on the evidence of his work here and the swagger he's got and all of it, he's there's a reason we were saying Swerve's time, put the belt on him kind of thing. But you put him on first or last, and I actually quite liked the closing angle of this show, so I would put him on first. Very simple.
Yeah.
Certainly over a wild thrown together tag team of Darby, Allin, and Hologram, like, sure.
Put this on first, move that up a match, put the bull rope match at the top of the hour.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think you've got a very well-paced show.
I agree. That is pretty much my only critique here. Because if you want to talk about the idea of, like, why would Swerve be putting himself in these matches, these world title eliminator-esque matches 2 weeks before he's got to face Bryan Danielson at the biggest show of the year, well, he's a fighting champion and he wants to do that. He's confident. Much in the same way that, like, with Cody, it's like, you know, there's something to be had for both. Either you come out as a champion, you only wrestle at the big show, or you're a fighting champion and you wrestle elsewhere. Both of these things can be true. I also am going to speak on behalf of the I don't like a certain style of wrestling fan club, which is to say, when we went to the Rev Pro show before All In last year, it was Luke Jacobs and Ishii, and everyone leaves and says that's their match of the night. It wasn't mine. I was pretty much the only one who was like, actually kind of bored by it, to be honest with you.
Madness.
And part of the reason, and it was the same thing in Forbidden Door, it's not to do with them. It's to do with how frequently now I see I'm going to forearm you, and I'm going to forearm you, and there's a back and forth, and it's like, when you see that the first time, you go, cool, and then you see that the second time, third time, fourth time on the same show, and then I see it all summer at loads of independent shows, I'm like, this doesn't do anything for me. Even as that critic, even as someone who says this doesn't necessarily work for me, this match wasn't that. Like, it was, for me, maybe it's just because I'm hyped on the Olympics and I've just seen all these people, I've watched the wrestling at the Olympics and I've watched the judo and the taekwondo and boxing and seen, people doing legitimate, physical competition, and take these blows and come back for more or whatever. What was happening in this match for me was two people, leathering each other and taking it and being like, right, how do I get back into it and go for it? Like it felt competitive rather than it being like, I'm hard. Do you know what I mean? Which is what I have felt elsewhere, or like just a spot just to pop the boys. This or to pop the crowd, a cheap pop. This did not feel like a match built around that idea of, or around that type of pop. This felt like a competition. This felt like Swerve maybe did bite off more that he could chew, but he's a world champion, so he's going to go for it. Ishii may well be in his late 40s, but he's also a tough guy. He's also someone who knows where his limit is, and he was reeling at certain points. But just because he wasn't like, whoa, like Matrix falling back, doesn't mean he wasn't selling.
Yes,
I think it was measured perfectly. So when I watched this match from start to finish, and then remembered all of the negativity on the internet about it, I was like, well, where did that come from? Because there are places and there are other matches featuring spots like this that I think are worthy of that negativity. This wasn't it. This was great. Well done to both people.
Yeah, 100%. I won't go into the whole song and dance about no selling and such, because there are obviously layers to no selling and its place in wrestling. Whether you're Sting popping up from being powerbombed through a table and beating your chest and everyone loses their mind like it's, the early 90s again, that has its place here. Some people might hate that. I don't consider what Ishii does to be no-selling, It's a different sort of thing. It's not just me trying to defend something that I like, but when Ishii takes all of these shots, you will very often see him step up, tank like 5 forearms in a row, give one back, and then go, "Grr!" Like, because he's absorbing these shots until they have run out of steam, delivering one back, and then going, oh, God.
It's the push and pull. It's the measuring of it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I put the contrast between, now you hit me. That for me does nothing to me. Which is a very different thing to what we're seeing Ishii do here.
Absolutely. A very good match. I was very happy with it. Backstage, Claudio Castagnoli had something to say about Kazuchika Okada. He said that he wants to be the Continental Champion for whatever reason. It is a belt.
Someone has to be.
Someone has to be, I suppose. And wants to hold that title before the C2 comes around again, in which you have to try and defend that title in the tournament. We'll see how that goes. However, he has called out Okada for a face-to-face next week, and then what he says is a bunch of C's in here, like a Combat Continental Clash in Cardiff, or something like that.
I do love the alliteration in wrestling, don't
they? They do. Which makes me feel like we're going to get Claudio and Okada on the Dynamite before Allin.
So are you telling me?
Which I don't think is what I would do.
On the Dynamite before Allin, we're going to see a Continental Championship clash in Cardiff with Claudio Castagnoli?
I think that is what we're going to say.
Crikey.
We'll see, but it looks like one way or another we're getting Claudio and Okada, which should be a fun match.
And Cardiff is a good crowd. We like Cardiff. Big up Cardiff.
Yeah. Back in the ring.
Also, sorry. I'm also like, again with the props. I said a while ago, you're coming here for Allin, you might as well do a whole week. When we've been talking about the Collision crowds being quiet or the Dynamite crowds being quiet or empty arenas or whatever, go to where it's hot.
Yeah.
We don't get it. Come and do a full week here, and they're doing it, and it's a smart call. It's going to be a big week for wrestling. It's going to be a big week for AEW. It's going to feel good. So actually, I would maybe put on a match like this at a show like that.
I don't disagree. I think you absolutely want to feed that market with their first international Dynamite outside of North America.
Yeah.
I also want to be in the crowd for that match. And
let's go to Cardiff then.
All right.
Let's go.
Bet. Off your pop. So then back in the ring, Lexi Nera stood there, brings out her guests at this time, Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway, who come down, Good reaction. Really enjoy Chris Statlander's presentation with the music. She's got really cool music, and then she comes out with like no light on her, just backlit from the Tron, and then comes down, and they start talking about the interview that had happened, I believe, on Rampage, where Willow Nightingale and Tomohiro Ishii challenged Stokely and Chris Stat for the All-In 0 Hour. I personally had thought that maybe we would get a 4-way of some sort with Chris Stat and Willow and a couple of other people as like a here's your nod for the women have to have a 4-way at All-In crowd.
Yeah.
You know, but
the storied history of women's 4-ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you gotta
that
keep
crap.
it going. Yeah. But like a number one contender's shot at the TBS title for All Out, for example. Set up some stuff for your pay-per-view that's soon after. We're not getting that. We might get that with other people. Who's to say? But the challenge has come out for this intergender tag title or tag match. And Stokely immediately is like, nah, that's crazy. I'm not going to do that. Why would we ever look at this? And Chris Statlander like takes the mic and says like, we're going to be happy to be there. And she accepts on both of their behalf. And he's like, what? Oh God, I'm going to die. So
she feels like she can take on Willow, but he's got to take on Ishii.
Yep. It's no problem for her.
Yeah. She's like, Willow's a challenge, but like she's not Ishii.
Yeah. But yeah, we got this match accepted and confirmed, and it's probably going to be a lot of fun.
What I love about it, so last year we got there late for the 0 Hour because Ollie Davies was excited to be walking around and doing a lot of this, and nobody liked to leave the pub on time. And I'm like, the show's starting. I want to be there for it. And I think also it went on a little bit earlier as well. Putting an Ishii match on the pre-show means that you guys are going to have to be in your seats on time.
I'm going to be there.
That's what I'm saying.
100%.
So you're going to be on. So I'd like to thank Willow Nightingale for setting out this challenge purely for my timekeeping purposes. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Backstage, we had an interesting collection of people, pun intended, where you had the MXM collection talking with Top Flight, that being Dante and Darius Martin, Layla Gray, Action Andretti, and then Leo Rush. All the people that like to fly. The former male models were gibbering and jabbering about this and that. They made a funny joke about snakes on a plane that is very outdated, but I laughed, so I appreciated that. They are a couple of wacky individuals.
You just know what they're doing. They're very good.
Yeah, absolutely. They've lent into this thing, and I greatly appreciate that. It's always been what we've said, even the people that like to forget about it, that when they debuted on SmackDown, we went, this act is great. I would like it to at some point mean something, because it was just, look at us, we're silly catwalk people. And that was the joke. And we heard the same joke 6 times in a row. Eventually, it started to mean something with Otis and all that, and then everybody was really happy about it. And now they're here, and they're getting to interact with all these other people and just have these really entertaining backstage things where the thing ends, they set up this little challenge here, and then they decide they're done, so they just hit the button on the elevator, and they descend out of shot, as everyone just goes like, what is going on? Wacky characters in wrestling playing their roles to a T.
Stuff and nonsense, but I'm a big fan of them, so I'll allow it.
I'll tell you who else I'm a big fan of. That is one Aaliyah James.
Yeah, big fan of Aaliyah James.
Making her
not really getting much
here.
To do here, but
not really, but that's a local talent around here. We see Aaliyah James at Hustle every once in a while. I've commentated one of her matches on NGW before. Big fan to see more and more of our local talent end up on Collision.
Good and with a great attitude, so.
Yeah. Hikaru Shida took on Aaliyah James here, and Hikaru Shida beat her quite handedly. Aaliyah got a few things in, got a nice Hurricane Rana spot in, but was quickly countered into Hikaru Shida, who hit a knee strike and hit the Falcon Arrow for the win. Solid, keeping Hikaru Shida in the win column, and shortly thereafter, jump out of order a little bit, she was backstage with Lexi Nair, and she said that next week on Dynamite, me, Mercedes Moné, I want the TBS Championship because I want stiffer competition. I'm going to take the title from you, and you and me, Britt, we're going to go one-on-one at Wembley. Which, if you're looking at it from a kayfabe perspective, this has sort of been a little 3-way feud, which, if you really want to believe that there's a chance that it could happen, Hikaru Shida and Britt Baker at Wembley Stadium is like a plausible match that could happen. I don't think it's gonna. It's gonna be Mercedes and Britt Baker for obvious reasons. But I'm very much looking forward to this match. This is probably one of the matches I would be most excited to see Mercedes wrestle in AEW. Her and Hikaru Shida.
I don't know what Jamie Hayter's status is at the moment. Do you?
Not a clue.
Because if she was anywhere close to being ready, that's where you get your four-way. Like, you have maybe Mercedes' cross that, or like Britt Baker's like, no, don't you come for that belt before me. Like, I'm going to get you, blah, 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 whatever. And they set up, they're going to have a classic all-in four-way with a surprise entrant. And then we all start doing this. I doubt it. I have no idea how Jamie Hayter's doing. I hope it's well. I hope it's well. I think she's apparently progress on the recovery, but
sorely missed.
But it's one of those things where it's just only because you talked about it being a three-way and had mentioned the storied history of the all-in four-way.
Yeah.
That's why I brought that up there.
So, rewinding back a step, though, we had the sit-down interview with Jim Ross and the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson. Mm-hmm. This, of course, comes shortly after Jim Ross had a sit-down interview with Swerve, and boy, were the interviews different in tone.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, given who they are. But Swerve was very, like, full of swagger, laid back, and just be like, yeah, I'm the greatest, and I'm going to beat him. And I'm not that worried. You know, I know this might be the biggest match of my life, but that's who I am. I step up on moments like this, and I'm going to beat him. Here you had a conversation between two people who have known each other for a long time. And Jim is just talking with Bryan, and Bryan's like laughing and joking with him. It's like, man, it was the biggest moment of my life when I had a contract with Bryan Danielson signed by Jim Ross on it. And I was like, man, I'm such a fan of this guy. That's crazy. 24 years ago when he signed his first developmental deal with WWE back in like 2000. It starts off like that. And then they get into a bit more like of a serious conversation where Jim Ross asks him about his body and what he thinks of, what comes to mind when you start talking about, you know, his neck and his knees and his arms and all this sort of thing. And he immediately says, like, well, my neck and concussions is what comes to mind first because, you know, I've been through some stuff and I'm in rough shape. And probably by the end of the year, I'm going to have neck surgery. And Jim's like, well, that's news. Because that's big, and I don't think he's lying about that, which is also like, you know, please be okay, Bryan. Getting that tinge worry back in me. But that being said, he did refocus and talk about how he's going to be the AEW World Champion. You know, he's had all of his various shots at the title, and each time he has failed. But this time he's not going to fail. He feels that he's the most mentally strong he's ever been in his career. And at Wembley, that's what's going to pull him through. And I really appreciated this, you know, and you might prefer the presentation style of the characters one way or the other, but seeing how different these two are, and they're both great, and they're going in, their mindsets and everything, I still, you know, I was very adamant that I think that, you know, Hangman should have won that match and all that. And I still kind of feel that way. But that being said, I think they have done a phenomenal job of getting me super invested in this. Granted, it's Danielson possibly having his last match, so I'm not going to get excited for it. But the promo that they did that first week after Blood and Guts on Dynamite, mixed with these backstage deals, I think has gone a long, long way for making this feel like one of the biggest matches of the year.
Yeah, and like, he wasn't there last year, was he?
No.
Right, exactly.
Had the broken arm from the Okada match.
That's what I thought. But like before I said this, I just wanted to confirm because like if it were to be one of, if not his last match, it's very special to be present for it. Do you know what I mean? And for it to be on a stage like that is very special. I love this kind of interview. I love that we can have Lexi Nair backstage, we can have Claudio cutting a promo direct to camera, we can have the Overrunners, and we can have this. I loved it over the SummerSlam weekend when they just had Cole sat down with Punk, and that felt like fresh and alive. I always talk about Gunther and not Gunther, Sheamus and Drew in a gym before WrestleMania 39. I love that kind of stuff. Anything that makes it feel different and exciting and honest, and the sharing the personal stories. And look, Bryan Danielson loves to lie. I hope he's lying about how bad his neck is, because if he is, it's a genius little bit of work and craftsmanship to make us. I always have a little bit of a heart in my throat when I watch Danielson wrestle.
A little bit.
have it with Saraya. Like I have it with Edge. I have it with anybody who's come back from that kind of injury. But to also sell the impact of the Tiger Driver, which we had elsewhere on the show with sort of the MJF and Kyle Fletcher and Ospreay situation, we had a reminder of the stakes of that. To allow that to get a little bit of heat as well, because that's partly where it came from, kind of thing. I'm all about it. I love it. I think this is great. I think this performance was good. I think drawing on the history they have together. I mean, Danielson and JR. Yeah, no notes. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, we had a little video package deal of MJF having beaten Kyle Fletcher, mixed in with interview clips of Will Ospreay talking to Kyle Fletcher, and Fletcher just being like, why can't you just pile drive this guy? He deserves it. And Will saying, no, I can't do that to anybody. And he's going to get pile driven at Wembley. I'm sure. And all pop. And they, of course, also set up MJF and Michael Oku that happened over the weekend in Rev Pro, which I was not fortunate enough to be there for. I was out of town, but SP3 and Luke and Ollie, they were all there, so I hope it was a great match and that they had a very good time. Which leads us to our main event, which was another big highlight of this show for me, because my God, this was fun. You had a number one contenders match for the World Trios Championship, as the House of Black took on the Bang Bang Gang with Christian Cage in his long-sleeve turtleneck referee shirt.
I think it's really insulting when people wear.
Yeah,
it's actually really bad.
Yeah,
when they
referee
take
shirt
the mic with their referee shirt.
Yeah, I think it's
really bad.
Yeah, I got a much bigger pop out of this than I did Seth's personally.
You're mental. This was fun too. They were both good.
Yeah. This is my brand of ridiculous wrestling attire. A turtleneck with long sleeves and a wrestling shirt. This is right up there with Mick Foley spray painting lines on his own thing.
I love a personalized... Yeah. I love it. This was great.
So throughout the show, every time this match gets brought up as the main event, Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness had a little back and forth about, well, surely Christian Cage isn't going to call this down the middle. Oh, you don't know. I think he's going to be the most down the middle referee of all time. Possibly just, having some banter, possibly foreshadowing what was to come. So, for the most part, he did call it right down the middle. He maybe got in people's faces a little bit, as you would expect from a special referee, but in general, he was pretty fair for the most part. You had a lot of really fun stuff here. Malachi Black was on one in this match, which is interesting. I feel like we haven't really seen a lot of Malachi Black in the last little while. Maybe like since the Edge match in the cage, Double or Nothing. But that being said, everybody was getting a chance to shine here. Both the Guns, Juice Robinson, Buddy Matthews really got in Christian's face because, who took out Buddy Matthews and everything? They had their moment. Brody King is just phenomenal. Newsflash, he's great. He got to take out most everybody in the Bang Bang Gang at one point or another. But we get to the point in the match where everything's pretty much breaking down. Everybody's hitting either a finisher or a big move on everybody. And finally, the whole field is down, and Christian Cage stands in the middle and starts counting. 1, 2, 3. And he goes all the way up. And he gets to about 8, and Buddy Matthews is about on his feet. And he goes 9, spears Buddy Matthews, counts 10, throws out the match. Double knockout, no one could compete. Brilliant. Because the people the whole match have been chanting, ref, you suck, ref, you suck, and now it's nuclear heat on Christian Cage. And immediately upon the finish, the rest of the patriarchy run out with chairs, and they beat down both teams and stand tall with the titles. I don't know if they're going to add a fourth team to this, make it a four corners trios match, but definitely you've got at least a triple threat trios match. Get as many people on the All-In card as possible, which I have felt is probably going to be the direction. Makes me the happiest because I'm going to see the most amount of people. Even the Guns. Guns are going to be on the show this year. I'm happy about it. I thought there was a really fun main event. You know, you had like your strong wrestling match in the middle with Swerve and Ishii. You had your hardcore blow-away match with the women earlier. And out here you just had some wacky sports entertainment with a crooked referee who wears a turtleneck with long sleeves. And then the rest of the group comes out and they lay everybody out to close the show. Those three were my big highlights of the show, in addition to the Outrunners video package. And altogether, I think made for one hell of a collision.
Yeah, that was a really good episode. I thought it was, I aside from just moving a couple of things around and pacing, all the material on offer was great. And I think I'm just very, very excited for the next couple of weeks.
I've been very much enjoying the trios division as of late.
Yeah, which is interesting. This is what I mean. These things come and go sometimes.
It's amazing what happens when you take the belts off of the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass. You know,
no comment. But yeah, like and this was a fun angle to close the show. It made them look good. It made me want to see them get their comeuppance, find out who's going to take over. Yeah. I like that. I like that they left that hanging.
Very much. And we've still got a little bit of time before All In. I'm sure we'll have the match announcement next week and everything like that. But this was a big thumbs up of a weekend for both SmackDown and Collision.
Agreed.
I think Collision's been pretty solid as of late at the esports auditorium, stadium, whatever it's called. I think that's been a good home. The crowd is still hot. We're like 4 weeks in. Good, strong Dallas area crowd. And SmackDown had the rejuvenation of life that is Roman Reigns, a new direction with Cody heading in a different direction from the Bloodline. So hooray for wrestling. Good mood all around. This was a pair of shows that made me go like, I like wrestling. Wrestling makes me feel good, which should be the goal.
Wrestling makes me feel good.
That being said, we're going to get into the last few of our Ultra Chats for the day. Ding, 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 ding. This is the last call. Make sure you get them in at WrestleTalk.com/support. We'll be reading out all the ones that are $5 and above before the end of the show. Thank you, of course, to the mods working on a day that they do not usually work.
That was a favor for me. Thank you very much. Love you. Well, we'll do these quickly.
So we will make sure to get through these. Raymond McMahon says, I heard a good pitch for the eventual solo Roman match being a variant on an I Quit match where one must acknowledge the other.
Yeah, I'm into that.
I acknowledge you match.
Yeah, I'm into that a lot. I don't like I Quit matches because it's just a lot of like, but the thing about a Roman Reigns match is that you can do it without using a microphone because we hear him talk all the time. I'm all about it.
That's a very fun idea. I like that a lot. Alroy has said, Bayley's not on the show, but I feel bad for her. It seems like she gives so much, but WWE just doesn't respect her. It seems like the way they do with Becky and Charlotte. I kind of agree. I think you can take 1 week off after having lost the championship. I mean, they'll do it next week. Like Nia wasn't on this show with the new title. It happens sometimes. But generally speaking,
the NWO
I do
weren't on the show the week after they were on Nitro. I remember watching it back on the network and being surprised. That said,
I do agree though. Like the way that Bayley's title run just kind of petered out by the end, like I do think more should be given to her. I'm glad she got her Rumble win and her Mania moment, and that was really big for a long time Bayley fan. But yes, more for Bayley. Matt Hennessy has said, I do think KO going heel personally. I do think KO goes heel personally. Championships have ruined relationships for him in the past. Look what he did to Sami Zayn on his first night in WWE. KO last 2 years in WWE have been his redemption arc, getting Sami away from the bloodline, helping Cody. KO is actively trying to be a good person, and while Cody means well, he's pushing KO back into his old habit where he gives up friendship for championship gold. Cody's actions, even if they are well-meaning, lead KO to a heel turn.
Interesting.
Could well be. I'm not against a heel turn.
Well, that has Kevin Owens in the Gollum role, where it's like the gold makes me turn a little bit.
Yeah.
Everything just needs to be organic. Otherwise, you do get what essentially is the Shinsuke Nakamura turn.
Yeah.
Where it was really exciting in the moment, but then after a while, where's it going to go?
Yeah.
And then you've got him, and then it's harder to turn someone babyface.
Yeah.
And KO is a pretty good babyface, and actually having a healthy roster of babyfaces is really important.
Yeah. It's a strength that you do not need to pull from if you do not have to. Kazlo25 says, could a Pretty Deadly the Musical, all musical episode of SmackDown work? I'm sure it would destroy the IWC, but I can't help but wonder if it could work and how the arena crowd would respond.
I love musical theater. It is my lifeblood. It's the thing I've loved in my life. The second longest besides wrestling. Never do this. Ever.
Look, man, people still get up in arms over the MJF Jericho thing, and that was like 4 years ago.
What? Which bit?
You know, the thing that won them the Tony Awards, Me and My Shadow or whatever.
Oh yeah, and when MJF coming out and singing a number is different to an entire musical production.
Oh, I completely agree. I'm just saying, look at the scale of that compared to a full episode of SmackDown.
Oh.
You know, but yeah, Chaos answer, do it. Matt Hennessy again says, I'll say this about SmackDown. They need to start building up more teams. The Street Profits are over with the main roster, and over the last years or weeks or months or whatever, there's a missing word, DIY have gotten over with the main roster, but when you have 9 teams on SmackDown and only 2 of them are over, that's not good. Hopefully, with the Lucha Brothers and Motor City Machine Guns on their way, that can increase things. I've liked Andrade's booking over the last 2 months. He's had bangers on TV with Hayes, KO, Waller, and Escobar, and he's getting over. I'm confident he will be successful. A lot of thoughts there. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've made my thoughts known on the SmackDown Tag Division, and you pretty much summed it up there. Only a couple teams that
it's all the divisions in general. Everything needs to have time, space to breathe, competition. It's very difficult to do that. We had 2 tag team matches here that were like 7 or 8 minutes with a commercial break in the middle of them. Yeah. It's hard to do. It's hard to do when the women, when that's all the women were getting on Collision. And hey, look what's happened when they've been given more energy. Like we got that Bull Rope match, you know. So I think that's really it. It's about proportioning your time properly. You know, some weeks you're not going to have time. That's why we didn't have Bayley and Nia on the show. Sometimes you are going to have time. It's a complicated game booking. Yep. That's why we sit at home and talk about it rather than doing it.
100%. And finally, Jose Garcia Eliason has become a member. Good clap. And that is going to do it for all of the Ultra Chats here. I don't know if we've had a poll. Let me do a quick check.
I don't think we have.
Nope. No poll. I'm going to assume everybody liked both shows equally, and there was no tribalism at any point because you're all wonderful. That being said, that will draw our SmackDown and Collision review to an end. Make sure, of course, that you are back tomorrow, as Dan and Luke will be reviewing WWE Raw. Apparently, there's some spicy things that may be happening on that show, and I'm excited to check them out. That being said, make sure you check all of that out. Subscribe to the WrestleTalk podcast channel if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already, and we will see you then. I hit the wrong button.